Obrigado. Oh, here it is. Got it. Alright, let's read this. So here it is. This is the... And then we'll continue with the anger quiz and the ADHD thing. And then we'll talk about Monsieur Boogie. Okay. Geek Thulu is nervous. Geek never thought this would go this far. But the idea of it was so hot that Geek is still groping himself a bit, even though Andy is going to be here any minute. You see, last week Geek was at his apartment and Andy had to get some more Coke. He was going to go with him, but Andy insisted that Geek stay and chill and he'd be back in a jiff. Well, since Geek knows Andy and he knows he'd run all the way across town to get the drinks, just for fun, he had at least 10 minutes to himself. So Geek decided to do what any friend would. He snooped around for a bit. Geek Thulu went to his bedroom first. You see, he just assumed that the best stuff would be in his room. But Andy's room was a mess. Comics, magazines, and dirty clothes. A tiny 12-inch TV sat in there with only a small DVD player hooked up to it. Is this what people think what I live in? Geek went through his drawers and found some stashes of money and a notebook with some things scratched on it, but nothing special. He thought he might be keeping the fun stuff under his futon. Then he lifted the bed and underneath Geek saw a porn magazine. Now that shouldn't have surprised him much, since Andy hadn't fucked anyone other than fat chicks in a while. He always called Geek after. But what did surprise him was the fact that it was a boys-only magazine. The one that Geek had misplaced. So, not only am I gay, Kumbola says for $2, ADHD confirmed, can't stay on topic. Listen, let me just fucking read this. And by the way, I learned to code for 2. It says Miller's messing with you. We can barely hear. Shit. Now that shouldn't have surprised him much, since Andy hadn't fucked anyone other than fat chicks in a while. But what did surprise him was the fact that it was a boys-only magazine. Geek had never thought that Andy might be bisexual. It would have to be bi because his computer is filled with girl on girl. He flipped through the magazine and something fell out. Gong gong gong. Something that sent shock through Geek's poor spine. It was a photo of Geek and Cog that had been taken when they were at the hotel pool. So Geek and Cog are chilling by the hotel pool in this picture. And in the photo, Geek was just in a pair of loose basketball shorts, and the water had them clinging to his big dick a bit. Not only does he have the shock that his best friend isn't as straight as he leads us to believe, but now he finds out that Geek Thulu wanks it to that Andy wanks off to a photo of the Geek Thulu. Geek took the photo and put the mag under his futon. Now a week later, a week later this happened, Geek invited Andy up to his place. He heard Andy knock on the door. "Come in, it's open," Geek shouted with his deep, manly voice. The door swings open. "Hey, big boy, what's going on?" Andy says, as he kicks off his shoes. "How's the business been going?" "It's alright. Cog's been driving me nuts though. He thinks that I was interested in Spectre, the guy he's with for some reason." "Are you?" Geek felt a bit of worry in his voice. "No, he's not my type. Too demanding," Andy said, giggling. He sat down next to me and said, "Alright, from the way you sounded on the phone, I thought something like this was bothering you." Andy smiled. Well, sorta like that, Geek said. Well, come on, man, I can't help you with anything. He goes, okay, then help me with this. Geek hastily pulled out the photo from underneath a book on the table. Why did you hide this from me? Geek had never seen Andy redder. The amount of blood that filled his Canadian face made it change color. I don't know what to say, Geek. Then don't say anything, Geek said sexily. Geek leaned in onto his right hand and put it behind his head. He kissed him passionately. Nick Naylor, whose shadow do I keep seeing on the wall? Okay. He felt all the tension in his body drain out at once. Andy brought his hand up and caressed the back of Geek's head as the other hand went around and gently grabbed his ass. His tongue danced with Geek's, the slick saliva allowing them to twirl and twist like dancers. Andy pulled away suddenly, and he gave Geek a look of desperation. Geek's eyes fell to his crotch. As hard as he was, his constricting jeans must be hurting. Andy's hand flew to his cock and unfastened the button on Geek's pants and yanked down the zipper. Could you don't DM me that you can't see anything? Are you? Shut up! Andy then slid up, running his hands up his legs until he got back to taking off more of Geek's clothes. Geek didn't pull off his boxer briefs yet. While staring into his eyes, Andy licked the top of Geek's erection. This is disgusting. This is disgusting. Should I continue? Okay, He gasped, his breaths deepened as Andy rubbed his staff through his underwear. Andy grabbed the waist on them and brought his mouth down over his shaft, breathing one hot breath right before on the head before he went back up. This is no good, Andy said. You still have your top on. What was all Geek could get out before Andy yanked off his shirt. Geek pulled off Andy's shirt and rubbed his chest against their nipples meeting as they kissed each other once more. Andy slid down, pulling his underpants with him catching his socks at the end. He went down on the floor and faced his friend's big erect penis. Now this is the part that really angers me. He placed his dainty bare hands. Like, why do my hands have to be dainty in this? Around Geek's shaft and licked the top. Andy licked around the head and the and the underside as Geek moaned and moaned. Andy went down on him, engulfing the whole thing, swallowing the tip a little. Geek writhed in pleasure at this. As Andy went faster and faster, Geek's breaths got shorter and shorter. He's about to come, Andy thought. Andy polished the saliva-soaked shaft quickly with his hands as he slid his tongue all around the head. I'm not dainty! I have to jerk off, this is too hot. I can't read this part. Okay. Andy, I'm going to... And then he erupted with a huge load of cum pouring out on Andy's tongue, down Andy's throat, and all over his mouth and chin. Wow, you've been holding that one in for a while, haven't you? Andy chuckled. Why would I chuckle? Wiping Geek's cum off with his small hands. Why do I have to? Okay. Andy unbuttoned his jeans and stripped. Geek took the cum from his chin and put it on his hard cock. That should help enough, Geek said. What? Andy questioned. Andy pushed his legs up to expose his cute, round ass. Geek clasped his cheeks and spread them with his thumbs. Geek slides his 7.5-inch meaty cock into his friend, his new lover. Andy half moans, half shouts as Geek begins to thrust his member in him. Andy felt so good, so warm, so right. Geek wasn't Andy's first. He'd had other boys before. Ralph, Alex, Failure. But this was by far the best. The feelings of such strong love between them made the sex so much more intense. As Geek headed towards climax, he thrusted harder, pushing Andy's legs. Why does Geek get to come twice in this story? Why? Pushing Andy's legs towards his head as he continues to yelp Geek's name and moan. Andy began to shout as Geek started to come. Andy, his lover, feeling so good, their bodies feeling so connected. As Geek leaves his warm juice inside of Andy, instead of pulling out, Andy is bleeding a little. What? My asshole's bleeding now. Here. But from his smile, Geek can see that it doesn't matter. Geek leans in and gives him another deep, loving, sensual kiss. Now you don't have to pretend, Geek tells him. I love you, Geek. I love you too, Andy. And I always have. I'm not autistic. I just did the test.